Hey, good morning, my friends. Dr. Gabe Roberts, the Subconscious Healer here, with today's Breaking Free from Pain video. Let's talk about the circumstances when pain outlasts the injury. Very common for people to have previous injuries, maybe years ago, in fact, and those injuries could have been severe at the time. But if the pain is consistently staying around long after the injury has occurred, this falls into the category of what's called neuroplastic pain. So before we get into this, let's take a moment and give a signal of safety to our body. Put your awareness right on your heart center. Slow your breathing down, exhaling longer than you inhale for 3 consecutive breaths. Breathing in for a count of 4. Breathing out for a count of 6. And 1 more. Finding a moment in my life when I felt very grateful. Allowing myself to feel those feelings of gratitude. Again, just a very simple exercise. Takes moments to do. Gives you benefits for at least 6 hours. Benefits throughout the entire nervous system. So, very simple to do. So what happens when pain outlasts the injury? Well, the body has a natural healing window that we should always remind ourselves of. 3 to 6 months. 6 months for more severe injuries. And the body knows what to do. The physical body knows how to heal. So if there's an injury, if there's tissue damage, if there's a cut, a scrape, a burn, a bug bite, a boil, whatever it may be, the body goes to work using various components, immune systems, several different systems, all together to heal that area. However, if the body actually goes through the healing process and there's still pain that sticks around, in other words, the pain is still consistent, it still hurts, it still gets your attention, it's no longer an issue with tissue damage. It's now an issue that your brain has actually not received the update that the healing has already occurred. Happens very often. After this is the foundation of what is responsible for chronic pain. It's when the brain actually didn't get the memo that the healing has already occurred. And additionally, the brain is receiving messages that there's still some kind of danger. There's still some kind of perception of a threat. And when that occurs, the brain will keep these symptoms going as its way of communicating to you that there's a problem. So I had someone write to me on, I think, a YouTube channel and said, well, this relaxation technique is good for helping people ease, but it's not going to alleviate some kind of structural problem. That's true. Okay, if there's a structural issue, like a spinal misalignment or something like a hiatal hernia, there's a good chance you'll need to do some kind of exercise or work with a practitioner, a physical therapist, or a chiropractor that knows what they're doing to assist you with that structural issue, because that can happen. The problem is that structural issues are a significant minority of the problem with chronic pain. I am a chiropractor, okay? I am a seasoned chiropractor with various certifications in acupuncture and energy medicine. I've worked with a lot of chronic people through the years. And what I can tell you is, time and time again, It's not a structural problem that's causing their pain. Now, I know the chiropractic model is consistently look at spinal misalignments and correct those, and that removes the interference. What happens if the interference is a person's brain and threat response? What happens if a person's brain is their fear of their symptoms, their worry that they'll have them forever, the frustration because nothing's working and they're still suffering, even years after the injury and their body is healed? What if they're obsessed with fixing themselves? Another mindset that keeps the brain interpreting the message that something is definitely wrong with us, right? Something is definitely wrong with my body. When we think we need to fix ourselves, our brain interprets that as something is wrong. And these are all things that are easily overlooked, poorly misunderstood, and these are foundational components that keep the pain around, keep the pain much longer than it should. Because pain is not necessarily about tissue damage. It's a protective signal that your brain actually gives you to let you know something is wrong. After 3 to 6 months, any kind of tissue damage from an injury or from an old injury, that tissue damage is fully healed. When the protective signal of the brain continues to fire, now it's more like an alarm system that is continuously ringing long after the fire has already passed through. So does that make sense? That's what happens in chronic pain. Most cases of chronic pain, significant majority cases of chronic pain, are not necessarily about tissue damage or structural misalignments. They are in fact the brain learning to keep the signal on longer than necessary. And this signal is responsible for the chronic pain. This signal it's a brain output from the brain to the body. That's why the pain's still there. The pain can still be in the area where the injury occurred, but the injury itself is not rooted in that area. The injury itself, or the pain itself, is not rooted from the injury. It's now rooted in a brain keeping an alarm system on longer than it should. This is neuroplastic pain. The good news about this, it's simply an error that the brain has learned to keep the pain on longer than it should. And because the brain learned how to keep it on longer than it should, the brain can unlearn it. And neuroplastic pain is completely reversible, completely curable. So this is really good news for people with chronic pain. But the longer that you feel that your body's broken, the longer that you feel you have to keep fighting your body, fighting symptoms, the longer your brain interprets that as a stress response or a threat response, and it will keep the pain going. Okay, so that's many times why people with chronic pain are not getting the answers they're looking for. They're not getting the relief through chiropractic care that they're looking for. They're not getting the relief through acupuncture and various other things that they're looking for. Maybe short-term relief, but first sign of trouble, brain activates the threat response, the pain returns. And for anyone listening that has chronic pain, that has had chronic pain, you know the cycle. You know the cycle of how often that pain sticks around and how disability it can be in your life. But the good news is you don't have to keep fighting your body. You simply need to shift your perception and retrain your brain to turn the pain off. And in upcoming videos, I will give you details on how to do this, as well as an accurate assessment to determine if your pain is actually neuroplastic or if it's actually structural. Okay, so there's various ways that we can determine this, because pain is not the same. Okay, pain, it has different characteristics and traits when it's neuroplastic versus when it's purely structural. So we can determine that just by certain assessments, questions, how things are, how pain responds to things in your life. Does it get worse when you're stressed out? Does it get better when you're on vacation? Those kind of things all give us a clear indicator of where the pain is sourced from. And when it's neuroplastic, we can actually It's exciting because we can actually change it, interrupt this cycle, and begin to give the brain signals of safety. When the brain has signals of safety, it simply turns off the pain response. It's that simple, folks.